All right, so you guys know how much I love a good Enneagram deep dive, and this one's really got me thinking.
Oh yeah, what's got you so intrigued?
Well, you guys sent in this YouTube analysis of Whitney Houston through the Enneagram, and it just really hit me hard. Like, we're talking about Whitney Houston, a legend, but also someone who clearly struggled.
Right, and the Enneagram can be so powerful for understanding those complexities, those different layers of a person.
Exactly. So in this video, the expert, Antonio, he analyzes Houston as a type 3, specifically the sexual subtype. And we all know type 3s, the achievers, they're all about that drive for success, right?
Yeah, they've got that ambition, that need to prove themselves.
Yes, but the sexual subtype, that's where things get really interesting, right?
Yeah, definitely. See, with a sexual three, it goes beyond just external validation. It's like they're seeking this deep, almost primal connection. And they believe they can get that through their success, through being admired.
So it's like they're trying to earn love through their achievements. Wow.
Exactly. And that can be a recipe for both incredible drive and potentially real heartbreak.
Totally. Because on one hand, you've got this incredible motivator, but on the other, what happens when that validation isn't enough? Or when it comes at a cost?
That's the core of it, right? Because underneath it all, the type 3, they fear being worthless,
Yeah.
unlovable for who they are, not what they do. So they overcompensate by achieving, trying to fill that void.
And when you think about Whitney's life, it's like she had it all, the talent, the fame, the awards, but there was always this sense of sadness, this longing.
Right, like she had all the external validation in the world, but was it truly fulfilling? Was she ever able to connect with herself, with others, in a way that brought her lasting peace?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And it makes me think about her music, which was so full of emotion, and her relationships, which, let's be honest, were pretty tumultuous. It's like this pushing pull between chasing success and yearning for real connection was always there.
And that duality, that tension, it's a hallmark of the sexual three. It's like they're trying to build a bridge to intimacy using the very thing that might be pushing people away, the relentless pursuit of success.
It's like this never-ending cycle. You achieve to feel loved, but in the process, you might actually be pushing away genuine connection. It's kind of heartbreaking when you think about it.
It is, and it highlights why understanding the Enneagram, especially the subtypes, is so crucial. It's not about pigeonholing people. It's about having more compassion, more understanding for the forces at play within them and within ourselves.
I'm with you on that. And speaking of forces, I'm really curious about Whitney's family dynamic. Antonio in the video talks about her mom, Sissy, also being a successful singer. How do you think growing up with a mother who'd achieved so much in the same industry might have impacted Whitney's development, especially as a type 3 sexual?
That's huge. It's like this inherited blueprint, right? Even if Sissy was super supportive, which it sounds like she was just growing up with that example, seeing your mother navigate that world, it would inevitably shape your own perception of success and what it takes to get there, especially in a field as competitive as the music industry.
It's like, talk about pressure, right? Your mom is literally Whitney Houston. I can't even imagine. I mean, that kind of experience could either light a fire under you or make you run for the hills.
Right. And for someone potentially wired like a type 3 sexual, it could really amplify those core fears. Like Naraja talks about how for this subtype, even something like love for family can get mixed up with this need to please, to earn that love through achievement.
Whoa, okay, so you're saying even that love and support from your family, which is supposed to be unconditional, could get tangled up with this drive for achievement and validation, especially for a type 3 sexual.
Exactly. And again, this isn't to say that Sissy didn't love Whitney unconditionally, but for someone wired like a 3 sexual, those early experiences could really solidify this belief that love is earned through what you do, not who you are.
Yeah, yeah, it's like those early experiences, they really become part of who you are.
For sure, and it makes that comparison that Antonio made in the video even more interesting, with Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, wow, yeah, what a comparison.
Right. He's suggesting they were both potentially type 3 sexuals.
Interesting.
And both of them, struggled with addiction, those really public struggles and those tragic endings.
Right, it's like they both reached these incredible heights of fame and success.
Totally, like global icons.
And yet, both struggled with those inner demons. It makes you wonder about that pressure to maintain that perfect image.
Especially for women in the spotlight. Oh, absolutely. It's like this constant pressure to be everything to everyone.
To be talented and beautiful and successful and always on.
And never show any weakness.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
And I can only imagine how much more intense that pressure must be for someone wired like a type 3 sexual,
Yeah.
who's already dealing with that deep-seated need for validation, that fear of not being good enough.
Yeah, it's like those unhealthy patterns are almost inevitable in that environment,
Yeah, you're so focused on external validation, on seeking love and approval through your achievements, that you might stay in situations that are no longer serving you.
even when they become really unhealthy.
Exactly. And that brings us to Whitney's relationship with Bobby Brown, which was obviously incredibly complex and tumultuous.
And Antonio suggests that her Enneagram type, that dependency that can show up in the sexual three, might have played a role in her staying in that relationship for as long as she did.
And it's so important, to approach this part of her story with sensitivity.
Absolutely.
We can't pretend to know what was truly going on in her heart or her mind,
For sure.
but we can look at those broader patterns, those tendencies, and how they might manifest in a high-pressure situation like that. When your sense of self-worth is so tied to the validation of others walking away from a relationship, even a toxic one can feel like you're losing a part of yourself,
It's like that fear of being alone, of not being enough, becomes so overwhelming that you cling even tighter to what's familiar.
even if it's hurting you.
Exactly.
And this pattern, it can show up anywhere, not just in romantic relationships.
Oh, yeah, totally.
It could be friendships, family, even our careers. We all have that tendency to cling to what feels validating even when it's not healthy anymore.
This has been so eye-opening for me, and I know for our listeners too. So for anyone who's resonating with this, whether they're a type 3 or not, what advice would you give them? How can we start to find that validation and self-worth from within instead of constantly seeking it externally?
Such a good question. It's not easy, that's for sure.
It's not easy, but where do we even start?
Well, it starts with awareness, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing those patterns in yourself, understanding why you crave that external validation.
Yeah, and I guess for a type 3, especially the sexual subtype, so much of their identity is tied to what others think of them.
It really is. So a huge part of the journey is learning to separate your self-worth from your achievements.
Okay, but how do you actually do that? Like, that's got to be easier said than done, right? Especially these days when everything is so achievement-oriented.
It definitely takes effort, but one powerful way is to connect with your values.
Your value?
Yeah, not the values the world tells you to have, but the things that truly matter to you deep down. What do you want to stand for?
Right.
What brings you joy, regardless of external recognition?
So it's like finding your own internal compass.
Exactly. It's about having that sense of purpose that's not contingent on winning or achieving or getting that external validation.
And I guess that takes practice.
It does. It's about showing up for yourself every day, choosing self-compassion over self-criticism, and learning to define success on your own terms.
Learning to be your own biggest cheerleader.
Yeah.
That's huge.
It really is. It's not a destination, it's a journey. And it's something that you have to work at every single day.
When you put that way, it makes Whitney's story even more poignant. It's easy to get caught up in the external stuff, the fame, the talent, the tumultuous relationships. But at the heart of it, she was a human being trying to find her way, just like the rest of us.
Absolutely. And while her story is unique in its scale, those underlying themes, seeking validation, struggling with self-worth, yearning for connection, those are universal.
Yeah.
We all grapple with those things to some degree.
We really do. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway from all of this. It's not about judging Whitney or putting her in a box. It's about using her story and the insights we can glean from the Enneagram as a way to reflect on our own lives, our own patterns, our own journeys.
Beautifully said. And if nothing else, maybe it can inspire us to be a little kinder to ourselves and to each other.
Absolutely. Well, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for diving deep with us today and for sharing all of this wisdom.
My pleasure. It's always a good time talking Enneagram.
And for our listeners, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Whitney Houston and the complexities of the Enneagram. We'll leave you with this. As you reflect on Whitney's story and everything we've talked about today, ask yourself, what does true fulfillment look like for you? What are the values that guide you? And how can you cultivate a deeper sense of self-love and acceptance regardless of what the outside world is telling you? Until next time, keep exploring those depths.